For the last 3 years, Donald Trump campaigned on lowering your costs. Do they feel lower? Does anything about this hearing get us to lower costs? You were promised cheap eggs, and today you're getting cheap shots. And there's probably no better natural remedy for insomnia than a congressional hearing on anti-censorship. But, Mr. Taibbi, you're here, and would you agree that censorship is the suppression of ideas, words, images, and something that can be conducted by the government?
Yeah, it can also not be by the government, but yes.
And you would then agree that it's censorship for any government, democratic or authoritarian, run by a Democrat or a Republican, to bar the press from covering the government when the press reports something the government doesn't like?
Bar in what way?
Take away their credentials? Take away their access?
So, as a long time, I started my career as an independent journalist. Journalists who whine about not being credentialed should recognize that being on the outside is part of what being in the press is. I'm not terribly sympathetic to people who complain about that issue.
So if you report something that a government doesn't like and they take away access that others have, that's not censorship?
You can still cover it. That's not censorship.
Okay. And banning books, is that censorship?
Banning books is censorship. Yep.
So this topic is more complicated than the hearing title would suggest. And I would argue the difference between a democratic approach and democratic activists on this issue and Republicans is that as Democrats seek to attack mis- and disinformation, it's because their perception of information is that it is a means to the truth. And for many Republicans, they believe that information is a means to power. And so they are primarily concerned with using information, whether it's disinformation or misinformation, as long as it gets them to power, they're okay with it. And it's difficult to try and litigate what do you do with mis- and disinformation. And I will be honest with you. Sometimes Democratic voices object too much to mis- and disinformation. A lawyer once told me when I was a young prosecutor that I was jumping out of my seat too much, objecting to conduct by the defense attorney, and while I was probably legally right, it was just annoying the jury, and that I should pick my battles. So I get frustrated too sometimes when it feels like the penalty flag is being thrown too often. However, there is a difference, though, between censoring somebody because you disagree with them. I'll credit Chairman Jordan. He and I have had some spirited debates in this hearing room. Sometimes they've gotten quite personal by both of us. And sometimes when I land a point, he gets upset. His staff gets upset. But he takes it like a man. And he'll make his point right back at me. And I take it like a man. You know who doesn't take it like a man? Donald Trump. Because he's not a man. He's a child. He's a small child. And he views censorship as a mean to get rid of people who disagree with him. He wants to get rid of judges who disagree with him. He said that as recently as yesterday. Speaker Johnson is backing him up by suggesting that judges should just pause in interpreting his violations of the Constitution. Trump goes after his perceived political opponents. I know. When I was a part of the Russia investigation, his DOJ subpoenaed my emails and my cell phone records. He's a petty, punitive child. And I can recognize a toddler because I'm a parent of 3 of them. And I recognize the same behavior. And yes, censorship is occurring, but it's self-censorship, and it's by you all. Because I hear you in our private conversations when you agree that Trump is a child. I hear the people you tell that Trump is a child, whether it's lobbyists or reporters. But you shrink in this room, and you shrink in the chamber, and you self-censor yourselves from speaking out because you're afraid. And he's laughing at you that you take him so seriously because he's unserious. He's laughing that you think he is so powerful because he's weak. He's laughing that you think He is so big because he's quite small. So we need you. We need your voices right now. It can't just be this side. We're all in to speak up, and we need you to speak up too. Otherwise, we are all out of freedom.